My mother always loved an audience. She beamed for the cameras, her arm tight around my daughter, pointing out the gold valedictorian sash like she had stitched it herself. But the moment the guests left the guest house lawn, the bill came due. "Start paying rent tomorrow," my mother said, looking not at me, but at my 18-year-old child. It was not a request. It was an invoice for 18 years of conditional love. The alarm clock on my nightstand was a relic from high school. A plastic cube that hummed with a low, electric vibration I could feel through the particle board table. It was 5 a.m. The sun had not yet crested the oak trees that lined the perimeter of my mother's property, but my internal ledger was already running: rent, utilities, groceries, the graduation gown rental fee, the gas for the commute to my second job at the diner. I sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. The air in the guest house was stale, smelling faintly of the lavender detergent my mother, Marjorie, insisted we use because she bought it in bulk. This space, a converted garage with drafty windows and a kitchenette that barely fit a toaster, was supposed to be temporary. That was the word we used. Temporary. 10 years is a long time for temporary. I walked to the small bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, in the mirror. I saw the lines that 32 years had carved around my eyes. I looked tired. I looked like a woman who had spent a decade holding her breath. But today, I had to exhale. Today was the finish line. Ava was graduating. My daughter, my brilliant, resilient Ava, was walking across a stage to accept a diploma with honors. She was 18 years old, and she was everything I was not at her age. Focused, confident, and unbound. We had done it. I had worked 2 jobs, one as a receptionist at a dental clinic, and the other waiting tables, to ensure she never felt the lack of a father or the sting of our poverty. We lived in my mother's backyard, yes, but we had built a world inside these 4 walls that was ours. I opened the door to Ava's room. She was already awake, sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at the navy blue gown hanging on the closet door. "You okay?" I asked, leaning against the frame. She looked up, her eyes bright. "I cannot believe it is actually happening. Mom." I sat beside her and took her hand. It felt small in mine, though she was nearly as tall as me now. "You earned every bit of this. Ava, do not let anyone tell you otherwise." She squeezed my fingers. "We earned it." My chest tightened. That was the deal we had made. Unspoken but ironclad. We were a team, us against the world, us against the subtle, crushing gravity of this property. A sharp rap on the front door shattered the moment. I flinched. I knew that knock. It was a 3-beat rhythm, brisk and authoritative. "Lucy? Open up. We have a schedule." It was Marjorie. I went to the door and opened it. My mother stood there, fully dressed in a cream-colored pantsuit, her silver hair coiffed into a helmet of perfection. She held a clipboard. "Good morning, Mother," I said. She did not return the greeting. Instead, she looked past me, scanning the small living room as if searching for dust. "The ceremony starts at 10 o'clock, she said, tapping the clipboard with a pen. "We need to leave by 8:30 to secure parking. I want photos in the garden at 8:15 while the light is still forgiving. Is Ava up?" "She is getting ready." I said, "Good. Make sure she wears the pearl earrings I gave her, the ones from your grandmother. They photograph better than those hoops she likes." I bit the inside of my cheek. "We will see what she chooses." Marjorie's eyes snapped to mine. "It is a big day, Lucy. Do not let her ruin it with cheap jewelry." She turned and marched back toward the main house, her heels clicking on the paved path. I watched her go, the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Marjorie did not see a graduation. She saw a pageant, and we were just the actors. The gymnasium was a sauna of body heat and excitement. The bleachers were packed with families fanning themselves with programs, the air thick with the smell of floor wax and cheap perfume. I sat sandwiched between Marjorie and my older brother, Eric. Eric looked exhausted. He was 35, with thinning hair and a posture that suggested he was constantly waiting to be struck by lightning. He gave me a weak smile when I sat down. "Hey, Luce," he whispered. "Hey, thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it," he said. Marjorie shushed us without looking over. She was busy adjusting the settings on her camera, a massive DSLR she had bought specifically for occasions where she could document her legacy. When the principal called Ava's name, the sound rang out clear and sharp. "Ava Marie Ward, valedictorian." The crowd erupted. I stood up, clapping until my palms stung, tears blurring my vision. There she was, my girl. She walked across the stage with a grace that took my breath away. She shook the principal's hand, accepted her diploma, and looked out into the crowd. I knew she couldn't see me in the glare of the lights, but I waved anyway. Beside me, Marjorie was shouting, "That is my granddaughter! That is my girl!" She turned to the woman sitting behind us. "A stranger. She gets her brains from my side of the family," Marjorie said, beaming. I practically raised her myself. I froze. My hands stopped moving. The lie was smooth, practiced. It erased 10 years of my late nights helping with calculus, 10 years of my double shifts to pay for tutors, 10 years of me holding Ava while she cried over teenage heartbreaks. Marjorie had provided the roof, yes, but I had built the home. I felt Eric stiffen beside me. He knew. He looked down at his shoes, unable to meet my eyes. I said nothing. I let her have the moment. I did not want to cause a scene. Not today. Today was for Ava. After the ceremony, we gathered on the front lawn of the school for photos. Ava was glowing, her face flushed with victory. Marjorie positioned herself immediately next to Ava, linking her arm through Ava's and tilting her head just so. "Smile. Darling," Marjorie commanded. "Show the sash. Make sure they see the gold." I stood to the side, holding Ava's purse and flowers, watching my mother curate the image of the perfect matriarch. Friends and neighbors came up to congratulate us, and Marjorie fielded every compliment like a skilled goalie. "Thank you," Marjorie said. "We are just so proud. It takes a village. You know, I have tried to provide her with every opportunity. One neighbor, Mrs. Gable, turned to me. 'You must be thrilled.' Lucy, I am," I said, my voice tight. "She worked very hard," Marjorie cut in, "and she had the stability to do it. That is the key. Stability." She smiled at me, a cold, tight expression that did not reach her eyes. The dinner was held at the main house, Marjorie insisted. She said it was to save money. But I knew it was because she wanted control over the environment. She had roasted a chicken and set the dining table with the good china. The plates we were terrified of breaking when we were children. The mood was strange. Ava was still high on adrenaline, chatting happily about the speech and her friends. But the air in the dining room felt heavy, pressurized. Marjorie sat at the head of the table, cutting her meat with surgical precision. "So, Ava," Marjorie said, laying down her knife, "now that the pomp and circumstance is over, we need to discuss the future." Ava paused, a forkful of potatoes halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean, Grandma?" "I mean that graduation is not just an ending," Marjorie said. "It is a beginning. You are an adult now. 18, a woman." I felt a prickle of unease on the back of my neck. "Mom, can we do this later?" I asked. "Let's just enjoy the night." Marjorie ignored me. "Being an adult means carrying your own weight," Marjorie continued, her voice calm and level. "It means understanding the value of $1. She took a sip of her water. "I have been thinking a lot about your next steps, Ava, and I have decided that if you plan to continue living in the guest house this summer and during your college semesters, things will need to change." Ava looked at me, confusion clouding her face. "Change how?" Marjorie wiped her mouth with a linen napkin. "Starting tomorrow, you will begin paying rent." The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Mom, you are joking. She is saving every penny for books and tuition." "She has the scholarship, but it does not cover everything. I am perfectly serious," Marjorie said. She looked at Ava, not with affection, but with a business-like detachment. You have a part-time job at the library, correct? Yes, Ava whispered. And you will be picking up more hours now that school is out? I guess. Excellent, Marjorie said. The rent will be $850 a month, payable in cash on the 1st. I dropped my fork. It clattered loudly against the china. $850? I asked, my voice rising. Mom, that is insane. You can rent a room in town for $500. She is your granddaughter. Marjorie turned her gaze to me. Her eyes were hard, flat stones. And this is my property. Market rates are rising. Lucy, I am actually giving her a discount considering she has private access and use of the garden. This is not about market rates, I snapped. This is about you trying to squeeze her. She cannot afford that. Then she will have to work harder, Marjorie said simply, or she can live somewhere else. Ava looked like she had been slapped. Grandma, I do not have that kind of money. I have to save for my meal plan. Marjorie sighed, as if she were explaining quantum physics to a toddler. This is the problem. Ava, you have been sheltered. You think things are free. They are not. If you want the privilege of living under my roof, you will contribute. It is called adult responsibility. She reached under the table and pulled out a notebook. Also, I will need a copy of your work schedule and your class schedule. For accountability, if you're going to be a tenant, I need to know when you are coming and going. I stood up. My legs were shaking. No, I said, absolutely not. Marjorie did not flinch. Sit down. Lucy, I will not sit down. You are ruining her night. You are ruining her achievement. Why are you doing this? I am teaching her, Marjorie said, something you evidently failed to do. I looked at Eric. He was staring at his plate, pushing a pea around with his thumb. Eric, say something. I pleaded. He looked up, his face pale. Mom, maybe 800 is a little steep? Marjorie shot him a look that could have stripped paint. Stay out of this. Eric, unless you want to discuss your own contributions. Eric shut his mouth instantly. He shrank back into his chair, defeated. I looked back at Marjorie. We are leaving. Marjorie picked up her wineglass. You are welcome to leave, but the offer stands. Rent starts tomorrow. If she stays tonight, the meter is running. I grabbed Ava's hand and pulled her out of the dining room. We marched through the kitchen, the heels of my boots striking the linoleum like hammer blows. I needed air. I needed to get away from the suffocating rationality of Marjorie's madness. Mom, wait, Ava said, stumbling behind me. I pushed through the back door and into the cool night air. We stood on the patio, the guest house looming dark in the distance. I am sorry, I said, my voice trembling. I am so sorry. Ava. She had no right. I turned back to the house. I was not done. Stay here, I told Ava. Mom, do not, she begged. It is okay. I can pick up extra shifts. It is not okay, I hissed. It is extortion. I stormed back into the kitchen. Marjorie was there, scraping the leftovers into Tupperware containers. She looked up as I entered, her expression completely unbothered. You are making a scene. Lucy, she said, you are a predator. I said, I kept my voice low, but it vibrated with rage. $850? You know exactly how much she makes at the library. You calculated that number to bleed her dry. Marjorie snapped the lid onto a container of potatoes. I calculated a number that reflects the value of the space. You are jealous, I said. It hit me then. A sudden clarity. That is what this is. You saw everyone looking at her today. You saw her shining, and you hated it. You hated that she is leaving. You hated that she is happy. Marjorie froze. She set the container down slowly. You are hysterical, she said. I am right. You want to clip her wings. You want to keep her here, under your thumb, begging you for scraps, just like you did to me. Marjorie walked around the island until she was standing inches from me. She smelled of expensive lotion and white wine. You think you are so noble, she said softly. The struggling single mother, the martyr. But let us be honest. Lucy, you are soft. You have coddled that girl until she thinks the world owes her a favor. She is a good kid. I said, she is strong. She is weak because you are weak. Marjorie spat. You do not get to raise a confident girl under my roof without consequences. You live here on my charity. You eat my food. You use my water. And now you want to dictate the terms? I pay for my own food. I said, I pay for the internet. I pay for our clothes. You pay for nothing that matters, she shouted, her composure finally cracking. You are a guest, a permanent, mooching guest. And now that your daughter is an adult, the free ride is over. She leaned in closer. If you do not like the terms, you can leave, both of you. Tonight, I stared at her. I saw the triumphant glint in her eyes. She knew I had nowhere to go. First and last month's rent on an apartment in this city was $3,000 minimum. I had $400 in my savings account. I will figure it out. I said, Good, Marjorie said, smoothing her jacket, because the first payment is due in the morning. I walked back outside. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists to stop the tremors. Eric was standing by the back gate, smoking a cigarette. He hid it behind his back like a teenager when he saw me coming. Luce, he said, you are a coward. Eric, I said, not breaking stride. He caught my arm. Wait, stop. I ripped my arm away. She is extorting your niece, and you sat there eating potatoes. I cannot fight her right now. Eric hissed, glancing at the house. You do not understand. She is nervous about bills. I stopped. Marjorie? Nervous about bills? The house is paid off. Dad left her the insurance money. She has the pension. Eric shook his head. It is complicated. I think she made some bad investments, or something. She has been writing me about money, too, asking me to cover things I never had to cover before. Why did you not tell me? Because she made me promise not to. She is terrified of people thinking she is losing her grip. So she takes it out on Ava? I asked. She tries to rob a teenager to cover her mistakes? Eric took a drag of his cigarette, his hand trembling. It is not just about the money. Lucy, she needs to feel like she is in charge. If she is losing control of the finances, she has to tighten the screws everywhere else. I looked at the house. The kitchen light was still on. I could see Marjorie's silhouette moving back and forth. She is going to destroy us, I said. Only if you let her, Eric said. But seriously, Lucy, watch your back. She is desperate. And desperate people do crazy things. I found Ava sitting on the steps of the guest house, still wearing her graduation dress. She had taken off the sash and folded it neatly on her lap. I sat down next to her. The night air was cooling, and the crickets were starting their chorus. I am sorry. Mom, Ava said quietly. I put my arm around her. Do not you dare apologize. You did nothing wrong. I can work more hours, she said. If I do the morning shift at the diner before the library. No, I said firmly. No. You are going to college. You are going to keep your grades up. That is your job. But the rent? We will figure it out. I lied. My stomach churned with the falsehood. I had no idea how we would figure it out. $850 was a fortune. Listen to me, I said, turning her face to look at me. You are going to leave this place. You are going to go to that campus, and you are going to get your degree. And you are going to have a life so big that this house looks like a dollhouse in your rearview mirror, okay? She nodded, tears spilling over. Okay, I promise you. Ava, I will not let her take this from you. We sat there for a long time, watching the stars. I tried to project a calm I did not feel. Inside, I was screaming. I was calculating hours, overtime, things I could sell. I was realizing that the safety net I thought I had, the uncomfortable but stable roof over our heads, was actually a trap door. Go get changed, I said finally. Put on some pajamas. We will watch a movie. Ava stood up and went inside. I stayed on the steps for a moment longer, breathing in the scent of the jasmine Marjorie had planted along the fence. It smelled sweet and cloying, like a funeral. When I finally went inside, the guest house felt smaller than usual. The walls seemed to lean in. I went to the kitchenette to make tea. That was when I saw it. There was a large manila envelope sitting on the counter. It had not been there when we left for the ceremony. Marjorie must have let herself in while we were at the school. My name, Lucy, was written on the front in Marjorie's sharp, angular handwriting. My heart hammered against my ribs. I picked it up. It felt heavy. I tore open the seal and slid the contents out onto the laminate countertop. It was a notebook. A cheap, spiral-bound notebook. I opened the cover. The first page was dated 10 years ago, the day I moved back in with a 2-year-old Ava after her father left. June 4th, diapers, formula, increased water bill, $150. I frowned. I flipped the page. July, groceries for Lucy, electricity increase, repair to screen door. Ava broke it, $200. I flipped faster. August, September, October, every month, every year. New tires for Lucy's car, loan. Christmas presents for Ava, loan. There were notes in the margins, emotional notes. Lucy ungrateful today. Refused to clean the gutters. Added $50 interest. Ava crying all night. Kept me awake. Nuisance fee. It went on for pages and pages. 10 years of life, itemized, monetized, and twisted. She had been tracking every perceived cost, every favor, every glass of milk, and assigning it a debt value. I stared at the numbers. They were nonsensical, prices that didn't exist, interest rates that were illegal, penalties for behavior she didn't like. I flipped to the very last page. It was dated today. Graduation party expenses, food, inconvenience, rent initiation. At the bottom of the page, there was a total, a number circled in red ink. Total owed, $42,600. I stopped breathing. The rent wasn't just rent. It was an installment plan. She didn't just want Ava's library money. She believed, truly believed, that I owed her a fortune. She had been keeping score for a decade. While she smiled for photos and told the neighbors she was happy to help. She had been writing down every second of our existence as a debt to be collected. I looked up at the window. The lights in the main house were finally out. This was not a sudden snap decision. This was not just about bills. This was a trap that had been set 10 years ago. And today, Marjorie had finally pulled the lever. I looked at the closed door of Ava's room. I could hear her moving around, getting ready for bed. I shoved the notebook back into the envelope and hid it in the bottom drawer, under a stack of dish towels. My hands were cold. My vision was sharp. I had promised Ava we would figure it out without drama. But as I stood there in the dark, I realized that peace was no longer an option. Marjorie had declared war, and I had absolutely nothing to fight with but the truth. I turned off the kitchen light, leaving us in the dark. I sat on the cold linoleum floor of the kitchenette, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the dead of night. The spiral-bound notebook lay open on my lap, a heavy, toxic thing that felt radioactive to the touch. I had read it once, quickly, in a state of shock. Now, I was reading it again, slowly, with the forensic detachment of a coroner determining a cause of death. The ledger was not just a record of money, it was a diary of resentment. I ran my finger down the column dated 3 years ago. March, replaced water heater, Lucy showers too long, $300 allocated to her share. I remembered that month. The water heater had burst because it was 20 years old. I had spent 2 days mopping up the garage with old towels while Marjorie stood in the doorway, sipping iced tea and complaining about the smell of mildew. I had not taken a long shower in a decade. I timed them, 4 minutes flat. To save water, I turned the page. July, Ava's birthday party, cake ingredients, balloons, inconvenience fee for noise, $150, inconvenience fee. I stared at the words. She had charged me for the sound of my daughter's laughter. I flipped back further, to a year when I had moved out briefly, trying to make it on my own in a studio apartment across town before the rent hike forced me back. February, Lucy absent, lawn maintenance neglected, emotional distress from abandonment, $200. She had charged me for not being there. The numbers were nonsense. They were round, arbitrary figures pulled from the air to fill a hole in her spirit, or perhaps her bank account. Food costs were listed for weeks when we bought our own groceries. Utility spikes were attributed to us during months we were barely home. It was a fiction, a rewritten history where I was not a daughter doing her best, but a parasite draining the host. I closed the notebook. My hands were trembling, not from cold, but from a rage so pure it felt like a clarifying fire. I needed to sleep. I had to work in 4 hours. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew that sleep was a luxury I could no longer afford. The rent demand was not a teaching moment. It was a collection call. The morning sun was brutally bright, exposing the dust motes dancing in the guest house air. I made coffee, black and bitter, and waited for the sound of Marjorie's back door opening. At 7 o'clock, she stepped out into the garden, wearing her gardening gloves and a wide-brimmed straw hat. She looked picturesque, the perfect image of a retired grandmother tending to her roses. It made my stomach turn. I took the notebook and walked across the lawn. The grass was wet with dew, soaking into my slippers. Marjorie did not look up as I approached. She was deadheading the petunias, snapping the dry blooms off with a sharp, practiced twist of her wrist. "Good morning," she said, her voice light. I held up the notebook. "We need to talk about this." Marjorie paused. She straightened up. Brushing dirt from her apron, she looked at the notebook, then at my face, her expression unreadable. "I see you found my records," she said. "I left them out for you. I thought it might help you understand the magnitude of the situation." I opened the notebook to a random page. "You charged me $200 for emotional distress in 22? I asked, my voice steady. "And here, you listed grocery expenses for August of last year. We were on vacation for 2 weeks of that month. We were not even here to eat the food." Marjorie sighed. Peeling off her gloves, "You are missing the point. Lucy, it is not about the specific carrots and celery. It is about the burden, the overhead." "I want to see the receipts," I said. Marjorie blinked. "Excuse me? If you are going to claim I owe you $42,000, I want to see the receipts. Show me the utility bills from 22. Show me the invoice for the water heater where it says my share was $300. Her face hardened. The pleasant grandmother mask slipped, revealing the steel beneath. "Are you calling me a liar?" she asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I am saying these numbers are wrong." I said, "I am saying you are making things up to justify charging rent to a teenager." "I have supported you for 10 years, Marjorie shouted, the sudden volume making me flinch. "I gave you a roof when you had nothing. I watched your child while you worked. I sacrificed my peace, my privacy, my golden years, all so you could play house in my backyard. And this is the thanks I get? You want to audit me? You are not supporting us if you are writing it down as a debt," I yelled back. "That is not help, Mom. That is a loan shark operation." Marjorie took a step toward me, her finger raised. "How dare you? I have kept this family afloat. I have managed everything. You have no idea what it costs to maintain this lifestyle." "Then show me the bills," I demanded. Marjorie's face turned a mottled red. She snatched the notebook from my hand, clutching it to her chest like a shield. "I do not have to show you anything," she spat. "This is my house. These are my rules. If you do not trust my accounting, then you clearly do not respect me. I respect the truth," I said, "and this ledger is a lie." "Then leave," Marjorie said. The air between us went still. "If you are so unhappy, if you think I am such a villain, then pack your bags, take your daughter, and go. Tonight." She waited, her chin high, daring me to call her bluff. She knew I had no savings. She knew I had no lease. She knew that leaving tonight meant a motel we could not afford, or a shelter. I stared at her, realizing with a sick lurch that she enjoyed this. She liked the power of the ultimatum. "I am not leaving tonight. I said quietly, "We have rights. You have to give us 30 days' notice." Marjorie laughed. A harsh barking sound. "Rights? You are a guest. You have no lease. You have no rights. But fine. You want to play legal games? Then I will treat you like a tenant. Rent starts today. $850. If I do not have it by the 1st, I will start the eviction process. And do not think I won't." She turned her back on me and returned to her petunias, snapping another dead head off with a vicious twist. I went to work. I had no choice. The dental clinic was busy. Phones ringing. Patients complaining about copays. The drill whining in the back. I operated on autopilot, smiling, filing, answering, while my mind spun like a hamster wheel. At lunch, I sat in the break room with Dana. She was a hygienist, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude who had been renting apartments since she was 18. She was eating a salad aggressively, stabbing the lettuce leaves. "She wants $850? Dana asked, pausing with her fork midair. "For the garage?" I nodded, staring at my uneaten sandwich, plus utilities, and she says I owe her 40 grand in back expenses. Dana whistled low. 40 grand? Did you burn down a wing of the house? I told her about the ledger, the emotional distress fees, the inconvenience charges. Dana set her fork down. "Lucy, that is not rent. What do you mean?" "I mean, look at the number," she said. 850. That is a weird number for rent. Usually, landlords round up. 900, 800. 850 sounds calculated. Calculated how? Like a mortgage payment, Dana said, or a loan consolidation payment. It sounds like a bank number, not a landlord number. I felt a chill. Eric had said Marjorie was nervous about bills. She owns the house. I said, "The mortgage was paid off years ago. Dad had life insurance." Dana shrugged. "People take out second mortgages, HELOCs. Maybe she leveraged the house and got in over her head. If she is suddenly demanding cash and inventing debts, she is desperate. She needs liquidity. But why squeeze Ava?" I asked. "Why not just tell me?" "Because telling you means admitting she messed up," Dana said. "And mothers like yours do not admit mistakes. They just find someone else to pay for them." She leaned in, her voice softening. "You need to check the title. Lucy, go to the county clerk. See if there are any liens on the property. If she loses the house, you guys are out on the street anyway. You need to know if the ship is sinking." I drove home with a knot of dread in my chest. The logic of Dana's words settled over me like a heavy blanket. It explained everything. The tension, the specific demands. The sudden shift from doting grandmother to landlord. Marjorie wasn't teaching Ava a lesson. She was looking for a cosigner. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Marjorie standing by the mailbox at the end of the long drive. She was flipping through a stack of envelopes. I parked and got out. Marjorie was already walking back up the drive, sorting the mail into 2 piles. "Hey," I called out. She glanced at me, then kept walking. I caught up to her. "Is there anything for me?" She handed me a single envelope. It was already open. The flap was torn. The paper jagged. I looked at the return address. It was from the University Scholarship Committee. "You opened this," I said, stopping in my tracks. Marjorie didn't stop. She shrugged without looking back. "I was checking for bills. It looked official. It is addressed to Ava Ward," I said, my voice rising. "It is a federal offense to open someone else's mail. Mom." Marjorie waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, stop it. I am the head of the household. I manage the correspondence. It is household management. Besides, it is good news." She stopped at the front steps and turned to face me. A tight smile plastered on her face. They increased her award, another $2,000 a semester. I looked down at the letter inside the torn envelope. I should have been ecstatic. $2,000 was a lifeline. It meant books, fees, maybe even a little breathing room for Ava. "That is amazing," I said, the words tasting like ash because of who had delivered them. "It is," Marjorie agreed. "We need to sit down and discuss how that will be allocated." "Allocated?" I asked. "Managed," she corrected. $2,000 is a lot of money for a teenager to handle. I was thinking we could apply it directly to the household expenses. It would lower her rent burden significantly. I stared at her. You want her scholarship money? I want her to contribute, Marjorie said smoothly. And since she has come into a windfall, it is only fair that she uses it to secure her living situation. It is for education. Mom, I shouted, it is for tuition. It is not for your ledger. Money is fungible. Lucy, Marjorie said, her eyes cold. If she pays tuition with that, she has more of her work money for rent. It is all the same pot. I just want to make sure it does not get wasted on clothes or parties. She reached for the door handle. I will set up a joint account for her, Marjorie added, to help her manage the deposits. It is the responsible thing to do. Do not touch her money. I said. Marjorie opened the door. We will discuss it at dinner. Make sure Ava brings her bank details. She went inside and closed the door. I stood there, clutching the open envelope, feeling the walls of the trap closing in. She was not just charging rent. She was trying to annex Ava's future. I found Eric in the garage. He was hiding, as usual, tinkering with the engine of his old sedan. The hood was up, and he was staring at the spark plugs with the intensity of a man trying to decipher a bomb schematic. Eric, I said. He jumped, banging his head on the hood strut. Ow. Jesus. Lucy. I walked over to him. We need to talk. I am busy. Luce, Marjorie wants me to fix the mower after this. I told him about the mail. I told him about the scholarship grab. I told him about Dana's theory regarding the mortgage. Eric wiped his greasy hands on a rag, refusing to meet my eyes. She is opening mail now? He mumbled. That is not good. Eric, I grabbed his arm. Is she in debt? You said she was nervous. Did she take out a loan? Eric looked at the garage door, checking to make sure it was closed. He lowered his voice. A few months ago. She asked me to sign something. He said, Sign what? She said it was for renovations. For the roof. She wanted to redo the shingles on the main house. She brought me this paperwork. A whole stack of it. She was super casual. Just like, sign here, sign here. And I read it. Eric said, it was not a renovation loan. It was a refinance application. Cash out refi. But she needed a co-borrower because her income-to-debt ratio was messed up. My stomach dropped. Her income-to-debt ratio? Marjorie has a pension. She has Dad's annuity. She should be fine. That is what I thought. Eric said, but the bank paperwork showed she had credit card debt. A lot of it. Like $50,000. $50,000? I whispered. How? She buys nothing. She goes nowhere. I do not know. Eric said, shaking his head. Maybe she got scammed. Maybe she has a gambling problem we do not know about. Or maybe she just spends it on stuff to look rich. The point is, I told her no. I told her I could not put my credit on the line for that. What did she do? She exploded. Eric said, she told me I was ungrateful. She said she raised me better than that. She didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. And then what? Then she stopped asking. Eric said, I assumed she figured it out, or gave up. She did not give up, I said, realizing the horror of it. She just found a new target. Eric looked at me, his eyes wide. You do not think... She is trying to use Ava. I said, she wants the rent money to service the debt. She wants access to the bank account so she can show the bank she has income. She is trying to use Ava's scholarship to pay off her credit cards. Eric leaned back against the car, sliding down until he was sitting on the concrete. We are screwed, he said. I am not letting her do it. I said, I will burn this place to the ground before I let her steal Ava's future. That night, after Ava had gone to sleep, still buzzing with the excitement of the scholarship, blissfully unaware that her grandmother viewed her as a revenue stream, I sat at the small desk in the corner of the living room and opened my laptop. I went to the county clerk's website. It was a clunky, outdated portal that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 90s. I typed in Marjorie Ward. The search wheel spun. My heart hammered against my ribs. A list of documents appeared. Deed, 1998. Release of mortgage, 2005. Those were normal. Then, I saw it. Notice of default. Filed 3 weeks ago. I clicked on the PDF. It opened slowly, line by line revealing the disaster. It wasn't the mortgage. It was a tax lien. Property taxes. She hadn't paid property taxes in 3 years. The county had placed a lien on the house. I scrolled down. There was another document, filed just last week. Mechanic's lien. This one was from a roofing company. The roof she had wanted Eric to sign for? She must have had someone do work, or started a contract, and never paid. I did the math in my head. The back taxes were $12,000. The roofing lien was $8,000. The credit card debt Eric mentioned was $50,000. She was drowning. She was completely, utterly underwater. And the date on the tax lien notice, the final warning before auction proceedings began, was dated 2 days before graduation. That was the trigger. The county had threatened to take the house, and Marjorie had panicked. She needed cash, fast. She needed to show a stream of income to get a payment plan approved. She didn't hate us. She was using us as sandbags to stop the flood. I sat back in the chair, feeling sick. It was worse than malice. It was incompetence masked as authority. She had spent 10 years judging my financial struggles, writing down every penny I owed her in a ledger. While she quietly let the foundation of our lives rot away from neglect, I looked at the date again, if she didn't pay a significant lump sum by the end of the month. The county would move to seize the property, the rent tomorrow demand. It matched perfectly. She needed Ava's money, my money, any money, to keep the wolves at the door. I closed the laptop. I couldn't tell Ava, not yet. If she knew the house was at risk, she would hand over the scholarship money in a heartbeat. She would sacrifice her degree to save her grandmother's home. Marjorie knew that. Marjorie was banking on that. I had to get us out. The next day was a blur of desperation. I called in sick to the diner, a loss of $60 in tips I couldn't afford, and went to the Briar Glen Community Housing Center. The counselor, a woman named Sarah with kind eyes and a tired smile, listened as I explained the situation. I left out the family drama and stuck to the numbers. Single mother, 18-year-old daughter, need immediate housing, budget, $1,000 a month. Sarah typed on her keyboard, grimacing. "Lucy, I have to be honest with you," she said. $1,000 is tight. The average 2-bedroom in Briar Glen is going for $1,800 right now. I felt the blood drain from my face. $1,800? Rents have skyrocketed in the last 2 years, she said. We have a wait list for subsidized units, but it is 6 months long. What about a 1-bedroom? I asked. Ava can sleep in the living room. I do not care. 1-bedrooms are $1,400, Sarah said gently. I put my head in my hands. I make $15 an hour at the clinic. And tips. I cannot do $1,400. Sarah slid a pamphlet across the desk. Have you looked at the neighboring towns? Maple Hollow? It is a 40-minute commute, but you might find something cheaper. I took the pamphlet. Maple Hollow. It would mean more gas money, less time with Ava. But if it meant freedom, I spent the afternoon driving through neighborhoods I didn't know. Looking for rent signs, I called numbers scrawled on cardboard in grocery store windows. No pets, no kids. First, last, and security deposit required up front. That was nearly $5,000. Already rented. I saw a basement apartment that smelled like mold, where the only window looked out at a tire. The landlord wanted $1,200. I sat in my car in a strip mall parking lot and cried. I cried for 5 minutes. Hard, ugly sobs that fogged up the windows. Then I wiped my face, fixed my makeup in the rearview mirror, and drove home. I had to maintain the illusion. If Ava saw me panic, she would fold. She would sign Marjorie's papers just to stop my pain. I had to be the wall she could lean on, even if the wall was crumbling. When I walked into the guest house, the air felt different, still, expectant. Ava wasn't in the living room. "Ava?" I called out. "Mom?" Her voice came from the main house. My pulse spiked. I dropped my purse and ran across the lawn. I burst into Marjorie's kitchen without knocking. Ava was sitting at the kitchen table. Marjorie was sitting across from her, a plate of cookies between them. Marjorie was smiling, that soft, benevolent smile that terrified me more than her shouting. There was a piece of paper on the table in front of Ava. A pen lay next to it. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, though I was breathless. "Oh, hello, Lucy," Marjorie said. "We were just having a chat." Ava looked up at me. She looked confused, uneasy. "Grandma was telling me about the rent." Ava said. I stepped closer. "What about the rent?" Marjorie took a sip of tea. I told Ava that I hate to be the bad guy. Marjorie said, "I do not want to take her money. I really don't. But I have expenses. However," she paused for effect. "I told her I'm willing to waive the monthly rent entirely." I froze. "Waive it?" "Yes," Marjorie said. "If she signs a simple family agreement, just to formalize our expectations, it seems like a fair compromise. Doesn't it?" Ava picked up the paper and handed it to me. "It sounds good." "Mom," Ava said, though her voice wavered, "it means I can save everything for school." I took the paper. My hands were steady now. I was in combat mode. Family residency agreement. I scanned the text. Tenant, Ava Ward, agrees to reside at the property rent-free. In exchange, tenant agrees to the following. 1. Contribution of all scholarship refunds and surplus financial aid to the Household Maintenance Fund. 2. Designation of Marjorie Ward as the primary emergency contact and authorized representative for university financial services. 3. Full transparency of all bank accounts and financial statements upon request. I read it twice. It wasn't a lease. It was a power of attorney in all but name. She wanted the refund checks, the surplus. That was the money meant for food, for books, for transportation, and she wanted legal authority to talk to the school. I looked at Marjorie. "You want her refund checks?" I said, "It is for household maintenance." Marjorie said, "If she is living here for free, she contributes her surplus." "It is common sense. It is theft," I said. Ava looked between us. "Mom, is it bad?" I looked at my daughter. She wanted so badly for this to be fixed. She wanted to believe her grandmother was kind. "Ava," I said gently, "this paper says that if the school gives you money for books or food, you have to give it to Grandma. It says she gets to call the school and pretend to be you." Ava's eyes went wide. "Oh." I looked at Marjorie. "We are not signing this." Marjorie's smile vanished. "Then she pays rent." Marjorie said, "Tomorrow, or you leave." I crumpled the paper in my fist. "We will figure it out," I said. "But she is not signing her life away to cover your debts." "My debts?" Marjorie laughed. A high, brittle sound. "I have no debts. Lucy, I am the rock of this family. You are the one drowning." I leaned across the table. I saw the tax lien. "Mom." The room went silent. The air left the kitchen. Marjorie's face went the color of old paper. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a second, I saw the terror behind her eyes, the sheer, unadulterated panic of a woman who had built a castle on sand and was watching the tide come in. Then, the walls slammed back up. "Get out of my house," she whispered. "Come on." "Ava," I said. We walked out. This time, Marjorie didn't follow us. She sat there in the kitchen, staring at the empty chair where her potential co-signer had just been sitting. I knew then that we were running out of time. The lien was a ticking clock, and Marjorie was going to do something desperate when the alarm went off. I just didn't know what yet. I took Ava back to the guest house and locked the door. "Mom, what is a tax lien?" Ava asked, her voice small. "It means we have to move, baby," I said, pulling her into a hug. "It means we have to move very, very soon." I flattened the crumpled piece of paper on the small laminate table in our kitchenette. Under the harsh fluorescent light, the family residency agreement looked less like a contract and more like a trap laid by a hunter who knew exactly where the animal walked. "Read it again." "Ava," I said, my voice steady but low. "Read the third bullet point." Ava sat opposite me, her eyes red-rimmed. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand and looked down at the paper. It says I grant Marjorie Ward access to financial information as needed. She read, and the first one, I said, contribution of all scholarship refunds and surplus financial aid to the Household Maintenance Fund. I leaned back, crossing my arms to stop them from shaking. Do you know what surplus means in financial aid terms? I asked. Ava shook her head slowly. It means extra money? It means the money for your books. I said, it means the money for your meal plan. It means the money for the bus pass you need to get to campus. If the school sends you a check for $2,000 to live on for the semester, Marjorie is claiming it. She is calling it a contribution to household stability, but she said she would waive the rent. Ava whispered. I laughed. A dry, bitter sound. She is waiving $800 a month in rent to take $2,000 a semester in cash, plus control over your bank account. And notice the wording. Ava, as needed. That means she decides when she needs to look at your balance. She decides when she needs to take a withdrawal. Ava stared at the paper. But why? Why would she do that? She is my grandmother. She bought me my prom dress. Because she is drowning. I said, and she thinks you are a life raft. Ava looked at me, her lower lip trembling. She pushed the paper away. I do not want to sign it, she said. But if I don't, she kicks us out, right? I reached across the table and took her hands. We are leaving anyway. Ava, this paper isn't a lease, it is a leash. If you sign this, you are not just living here. You are working for her. You become an asset in her portfolio, not her granddaughter. I saw the conflict in her face, the deep, ingrained desire to please the matriarch. Marjorie had spent 18 years grooming Ava to be the good one, the grateful one. Breaking that programming was painful. It was physically hurting her. We will find a place. I promised. I am looking. I have appointments. Just do not sign this. The backlash began the next morning. I was at the dental clinic, filing patient charts. When my phone buzzed, it was a text from my cousin. Sarah, heard you are refusing to let Ava pay her share. That is really disappointing. Lucy, she is an adult now. You should be teaching her responsibility, not entitlement. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen. Marjorie had been busy. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, another text. This one from my Uncle Bob, Marjorie's younger brother. Marjorie is practically in tears. She says she offered you a free ride and you threw it in her face after everything she has done for you? You need to apologize. She was spinning the narrative. She had taken the family residency agreement, a document that demanded access to a student's federal financial aid, and reframed it as a benevolent offer of free rent that I, the ungrateful daughter, had spitefully rejected. I went to the bathroom and locked the door, leaning my forehead against the cool tile. I felt surrounded. The family had always been Marjorie's audience, and she played them like a maestro. I was the villain. I was the leech who wouldn't let go. My phone buzzed again. I flinched. I looked at the screen. It was Aunt Patrice. Patrice was the black sheep. She had divorced her husband 10 years ago and moved 2 states away. We rarely spoke, mostly because Marjorie always referred to her as unstable. I answered, bracing for another lecture. Hello? Lucy. Patrice's voice was raspy, like she had just woken up. Is it true? Is what true? I asked, defensive, that I am a terrible mother who raises entitled brats? No, Patrice said. Is it true she presented you with a ledger? I froze. I hadn't told anyone about the ledger except Dana. How do you know about that? She called me. Patrice said, she is working down the phone tree. Lucy, she told me she has been keeping track of your debts for a decade and you refuse to acknowledge them. She wanted me to call you and talk sense into you. I sank onto the closed toilet lid. It is insane. Aunt Patrice, she has charges in there for emotional distress. She wants Ava's scholarship money. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, Patrice sighed. A heavy, rattling sound. She did it to me. Lucy, what, 12 years ago? Patrice said. When I left David, I stayed with her for 6 months. I thought she was saving my life. She was so sweet. Stay as long as you need. Trice. Don't worry about money. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Those were the exact words she had said to me. And then? I asked. And then I got a job. Patrice said, and the day I got my first paycheck, she handed me a bill, $6,000, for room, board, and counseling services. That is what she called our late-night talks. She said if I didn't pay it, she would tell the family I had stolen from her. I gripped the phone tight. Oh my God. I paid it, Patrice said. I took out a payday loan and I paid her, and then I left and I never went back. That is why I am in Arizona. Lucy, that is why she calls me unstable. Because I escaped. I started to cry. Silent tears running down my face. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I was just the next victim in the cycle. Get out, Patrice whispered. Do not negotiate. Do not sign. Just get out. She does not want the money. Lucy, she does. But that is not the point. She wants the hook. She wants to know she owns you. Thank you, I choked out. Thank you for telling me. Be careful, Patrice said. When she realizes she cannot control you, she will try to break you. I drove home that evening with a new clarity. The guilt was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't fighting my mother anymore. I was fighting a predator. I found Marjorie in the living room of the main house. She was sitting in her armchair, a book open on her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was staring at the wall. We need to talk, I said from the doorway. She looked at me, her eyes red and puffy. She looked smaller than usual, frail. I do not know what is happening to us. Lucy, she said, her voice trembling. I try so hard. I try to be a good mother, and everyone turns on me. I walked into the room but didn't sit down. I talked to Patrice. I said, the frailty vanished. Marjorie went rigid. Patrice is a bitter, confused woman, she said sharply. I would not put much stock in anything she says. She told me about her bill. I said, the counseling services. Marjorie slammed her book shut. She took advantage of me, Marjorie shouted. Just like you. I gave her sanctuary and she treated it like a hotel. She was your sister. I said, and I am your daughter, and you are trying to extort us because you are broke. Marjorie stood up. She was shaking. I am not broke. I am managing assets. I saw the tax lien. Mom, I said quietly, I saw the default notice. I know about the credit cards. Marjorie's face crumpled. For a second, I thought she was going to attack me. Instead, she collapsed back into the chair and put her face in her hands. I am going to lose it, she sobbed. They are going to take the house. It is all I have. Lucy, your father left me with nothing but this house and a pension that barely covers the electric bill. I just wanted to save it. For you. For Ava. I watched her cry. A part of me, the part that was still a little girl, wanted to rush forward and comfort her. Wanted to promise I would fix it, but then I remembered the ledger. Inconvenience fee. You are not saving it for us, I said. You are charging us to live in it. If you had just told me, Mom, if you had just said, I am in trouble, we could have worked something out. I could have paid rent, real rent. But you lied. You pretended you were rich and we were burdens. I had to be strong, she wailed. I had to be the head of the family. You are not the head of the family, I said. You are the bank, and you are failing. I turned to leave. If you walk out that door, Marjorie's voice changed instantly. The tears stopped as if a faucet had been turned off. The cold, hard steel returned. If you walk out that door, Lucy, do not expect this family to support you. I will make sure everyone knows what you did. I will tell them you abandoned your mother when she was losing her home. I looked back at her. They already know. Mom, Patrice knows, and soon, the rest of them will too. I walked out. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel heavy. I felt light. I spent the night digging. I pulled 2 plastic bins from under my bed in the guest house. These were my archives. I was a hoarder of paper, a habit born from anxiety, from the fear that one day I would need to prove I existed. I sat on the floor, Surrounded by stacks of paper, sorting through 10 years of history, I found them. Pay stubs from my first job at the diner. Dated 8 years ago. Bank statements showing transfers to Marjorie. November 2018. Transfer to Mom. $300. December 2018. Transfer to Mom. $400. I found texts. I had saved my chat history backups on an old hard drive. I plugged it in and scrolled. March 4th, 2019. Me. Mom, I can give you $200 for the electric bill this month. Marjorie. Don't be silly. Honey, save it for Ava. I have plenty. I just love having you girls close. July 12th, 2021. Me. I bought groceries for the house. Filled the fridge. Marjorie. You are such a blessing. Lucy. Thank you. I took screenshots. I printed them out. I compared them to the ledger she had given me. In the ledger. March 2019 listed, electric overage. Lucy refused to pay. Added to debt, $250. In the ledger, July 2021 listed, food consumption. Lucy ate more than her share, $150. It was a complete fabrication. She hadn't just exaggerated, she had rewritten reality. She had taken my contributions, accepted them with a smile, and then recorded them as refusals in her secret book. I felt sick. It was gaslighting on an industrial scale. She had been building a case against me while hugging me goodnight. I organized the documents into a folder. I labeled it The Truth. I didn't know if I would ever need to show it to a judge, but I needed to see it for myself. A knock on the door startled me. It was late, past 11. I opened it a crack. It was Eric. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, and he smelled like stale beer. Can I come in? He asked. I opened the door. He walked in and sat heavily on the sofa, putting his head in his hands. She called me. He said, She told me you attacked her. She said you laughed at her for being poor. I sat down next to him. You know that is not true. Eric. He nodded. I know because I saw the letters. What letters? Months ago, he said. I was looking for a screwdriver in her desk drawer. I found a stack of notices. Past due. Final warning. The county tax assessor. I stared at him. You knew? I didn't know it was this bad. He pleaded. I saw the red ink. I asked her about it. And? She told me to shut up. Eric said, She told me it was a mistake, a clerical error, and she was handling it. She said if I told you, I would just worry you for no reason. She said you were too fragile to handle the stress. I laughed. Fragile. I have been working 2 jobs for a decade. Eric, I am the least fragile person in this family. I know, he said quietly. I am sorry. Lucy, I should have told you. I was scared of her. She has this way of looking at you like you are garbage if you question her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. It wasn't much, maybe $200. This is all I have on me, he said. I can help you move. I have a buddy with a truck. We can get your stuff out whenever you find a place. I pushed the money back to him. Keep the money. Eric, you need it, but I will take the truck. He looked at me, his eyes wet. She is going to cut me off too, isn't she? He asked. If I help you? Probably, I said. He took a deep breath and nodded. Good, he said. I think I'm ready. The next afternoon, I was taking the recycling bin out to the curb. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who had congratulated us at graduation, was checking her mail. Hi, Mrs. Gable, I said, forcing a smile. She looked up. Her smile was tight, hesitant. Oh, hello, Lucy. She closed her mailbox and turned to walk away, then stopped. She looked at me with a strange mixture of pity and judgment. You know, she said, stepping closer to the hedge that separated our driveways, I was surprised to hear you are moving. Oh, I said. News travels fast. Marjorie told me. Mrs. Gable said. She was quite upset. She said she offered to let you stay on, well, under the circumstances. What circumstances? I asked, my blood running cold. Well, you know, Mrs. Gable lowered her voice. With your financial situation, she said she has been letting you live there gratis for years because you could not hold down a steady job. It must be hard, raising a girl on your own without resources. I stood there, stunned. I have 2 jobs. Mrs. Gable, I said, my voice shaking. I have worked at the dental clinic for 6 years, and the diner for 4. I have never been unemployed. Mrs. Gable blinked. Oh, Marjorie said well. She said she was paying for everything. Even your car. She said she was worried you wouldn't be able to make it in the real world. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. It wasn't just the family. She had poisoned the entire neighborhood. All those sympathetic smiles over the years. They weren't admiration for a hardworking single mom. They were charity for the town loser who mooched off her elderly mother. She engineered the shame. She made sure that if I ever tried to tell the truth, no one would believe me because I was already established as the charity case. I pay my own bills. Mrs. Gable, I said firmly, and I am moving because I choose to. Have a good day. I walked back up the driveway, my hands clenched into fists. I wanted to scream. I wanted to print out my tax returns and staple them to every telephone pole on the street. But I knew it wouldn't matter. The lie had a 10-year head start. I found Ava in the living room, sitting on the floor with her laptop. She looked up when I came in, her face pale. Mrs. Higgins just left, she said. Mrs. Higgins was Marjorie's best friend, a woman who wore too much turquoise jewelry and acted as Marjorie's primary enforcer. What did she want? I asked. She brought me a graduation card, Ava said. And then she sat down and told me about this great opportunity. Let me guess. I said, commuting? Ava nodded. She said her son commutes to the university and saves $10,000 a year. She said with the situation at home, it would be really selfish of me to spend money on a dorm. She said I should stay here and support Grandma. I closed my eyes. They were swarming. What did you say? I asked. Ava looked down at her hands. I told her I already paid the deposit. Ava said, I lied, but I told her I need to be on campus for my labs. And? She told me I was making a mistake. She said, your grandmother sacrificed everything for you. Ava, do not abandon her now. Ava looked up at me, tears in her eyes. Mom, am I abandoning her? If she loses the house, is it my fault? I dropped to my knees and grabbed her shoulders. No, listen to me. No. Marjorie spent $50,000 on credit cards. Marjorie stopped paying the property taxes 3 years ago. You were 15. Were you supposed to pay the taxes when you were 15? Ava shook her head. No. Then it is not your fault. You cannot fix a house that was built to collapse. If you stay, she will drain you dry, and the house will legally be taken anyway, and then we will both be broke and homeless. The only way you help us is by getting out and succeeding. Ava took a deep breath. She wiped her eyes. I am not commuting, she said firmly. I am going. I am going to live in the dorms. Good. I said, good. But where will you live? She asked. I stood up. I am finding a place. Today, I spent the next 3 days in a frenzy. I refreshed rental apps every 10 minutes. I toured apartments during my lunch breaks. Finally, I found it. It was a 1-bedroom apartment above a hardware store in Maple Hollow. It was small. The carpet was a questionable shade of brown, and the view was of a dumpster, but it was clean, and it was $1,200 a month. It was at the absolute top of my budget. I would have to pick up a 3rd shift at the diner. I would have to stop buying coffee. I would have to eat ramen. But I could do it. I met the landlord, a gruff old man named Mr. Henderson who smelled like sawdust. I like you, he said, looking at my pay stubs. You got steady work. That counts for a lot. I filled out the application right there on his workbench. I handed him the $40 application fee in cash. I will run the background check tonight, he said. If it clears, you can move in Saturday. I drove home feeling a euphoria I hadn't felt in years. I had a way out. I had a key to a door that Marjorie didn't own. I started packing. I packed quietly, putting things into trash bags so Marjorie wouldn't hear the cardboard boxes. I was ready. The next morning, I was at work when my phone rang. It was Mr. Henderson. Mrs. Ward? He asked. Yes? I held my breath. Waiting for the, "You're approved. I cannot rent to you," he said. My heart stopped. What? Why? I make 3 times the rent. My income is verified. It is not the income, he said. It is the credit report. My credit is fine. I said, I have a 700 score. I checked it last month. Not anymore. He said, it came back with a flag. You have a collection account. A big one. That is impossible. I said, gripping the phone. I have no debt. I pay everything on time. It is listed here. He said, some utility company, Briarglen Energy, $3,000 in arrears. It went to collections 2 weeks ago. It tanked your score. Ms. Ward, you are down to 550. I felt the room spin. Briarglen Energy? That was the electric company. I don't have an account with them. I stammered. The utilities at the house are in my mother's name. Well, your name is on this one, he said, and until it is cleared up, I cannot take the risk. Sorry, he hung up. I stood there in the middle of the dental office, the silence of the phone screaming in my ear. $3,000. In my name. It wasn't a mistake. I knew exactly what it was. Marjorie hadn't just been charging me fake rent in her ledger. At some point, years ago, she must have put a utility bill in my name. Maybe when I moved back in. Maybe she forged my signature. And then she stopped paying it. She had booby-trapped my exit. I looked at the phone. I looked at the truth folder in my bag. I wasn't just fighting for an apartment anymore. I was fighting for my identity. I grabbed my purse and walked out of the office. Where are you going? The receptionist asked. To the police station, I said. I sat in the passenger seat of my car, parked in the furthest corner of the dental clinic lot. My laptop balanced on my knees. The screen glowed with the stark, unforgiving white of a credit monitoring website. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I clicked Download Full Report. The file opened. I scrolled past the green check marks of my student loans, paid off years ago, and my modest credit card with its 0 balance. I reached the section marked Derogatory Marks. There it was, a red flag waving in the digital wind. Creditor, Briarglen Energy, status, collections, amount past due, $3,240. Date opened, October 12th, 5 years ago. I stared at the date, 5 years ago. That was the year Ava had braces. That was the year I had picked up the second job at the diner. We were living in the guest house. I looked at the address listed for the account. It was Marjorie's address. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had never opened an account with Briarglen Energy. The utilities were included in the arrangement Marjorie constantly held over my head. I gave her cash for the electric bill every month. I had handed her envelopes filled with 20s, watching her tuck them into her purse with a nod of approval. She had taken my cash, and she had opened a separate account in my name, let it run up, and never paid it. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the collection agency listed. A company called Titan Recovery. Titan Recovery. This is Mark. I need information on a debt. I said, my voice tight. I am disputing it. It is not mine. Name and social? I gave it to him. Okay. Ms. Ward, we have an account here purchased from Briarglen Energy. Service address is 442 Oak Lane. That is my mother's house. I said, I live there. But I did not open this account. Mark sighed. The sound of a man who heard this story 10 times a day. It was opened online. Ma'am, we have the IP logs. It matches the service address. What about security? I asked. How did they verify it was me? Standard questions, Mark said. Mother's maiden name. Name of your first pet. I froze. Mother's maiden name. Callahan. First pet. Buster. A golden retriever we had when I was 7. Only family knew Buster. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a hacker in a basement halfway across the world. It was the woman who sat across from me at Sunday dinner. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. The silence in the car was deafening. I felt violated in a way that was physical, a nausea rising in my throat. She had used my identity like a spare credit card. She had burned my name to keep the lights on, while taking my cash to maintain her own illusion of solvency. I closed the laptop. I had to go back to work. I had to smile at patients and schedule root canals while the foundation of my life turned to ash. I drove home that evening with the credit report printed out and folded inside my purse. It felt like carrying a weapon. When I walked into the main house to pick up a package Ava had left there, Marjorie was in the kitchen. She was baking. The smell of cinnamon and sugar filled the air, a scent that used to mean safety, but now smelled like deception. She looked up as I entered, wiping flour from her hands on a floral apron. "Lucy," she said, her voice unusually bright. "You are home early." "I am not early," I said. "I am on time." She hesitated, sensing the frost in my tone. She wiped her hands again. "I was thinking about you today," she said. "I hate that we are fighting. It makes me physically ill." "Lucy, family should not fight over money." I said nothing. I just watched her perform. "I want to help you," she continued, walking over to the counter where her checkbook lay open. "I know you were looking at that apartment in Maple Hollow. I know the deposit is steep." She picked up a pen. "I am willing to gift you the deposit money," she said. $2,000. "To help you get settled." I stared at her. $2,000. She was drowning in debt, facing a tax lien, and yet here she was, offering to write a check she probably couldn't cash, or worse, using credit to pay for it. "What is the catch?" I asked. Marjorie sighed, a look of pained martyrdom crossing her face. "No catch. I just want you to be secure. But for my own records, and for fairness to Eric." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "I drafted a small repayment plan. It just acknowledges the ledger balance. You do not have to pay it now. It just says that when you are able, perhaps when you get a better job, you will begin to pay back the $40,000. It is just a formality, to keep things clean." I looked at the paper. Acknowledgement of debt. If I signed that, I would validate the ledger. I would turn her fantasy numbers into a legal obligation. And she was offering me $2,000, money she was likely borrowing, to buy my servitude. I laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound. "You want me to sign a confession for a debt that does not exist, in exchange for a check that will probably bounce?" Marjorie slammed the checkbook shut. "How dare you? I am trying to be generous. I am trying to bridge the gap." I reached into my purse and pulled out the folded credit report. I tossed it onto the flowered counter. "Tell me about Briar Glen Energy." "Mom." Marjorie went still. Her eyes flicked to the paper, then back to me. "I do not know what you are talking about. It is a utility account," I said, stepping closer. "Opened in my name. 5 years ago. $3,000 past due. It was opened with security questions only you would know." Marjorie turned away, busying herself with the cookie dough. "You are paranoid," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "You probably opened it and forgot. You were always scatterbrained in your 20s. I paid you cash for the electric bill," I shouted, "every single month. I gave you the money, and you pocketed it, and you opened an account in my name and let it rot." Marjorie spun around, her face twisted in fury. "I handled the bills. I managed this house. Do you have any idea what it takes to keep this place running? To keep the heat on? To fix the roof? I did what I had to do. You stole my identity." I said, "That is a crime. That is fraud." "I am your mother," she screamed. "There is no fraud between family. I gave you life. You wouldn't have survived without me." The words hung in the air, vibrating. "You wouldn't have survived without me." There it was, the core belief. She didn't see me as a person. She saw me as an extension of herself, a limb she could cut off or cauterize as needed to save the body. She believed she owned me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. "I am disputing the debt," I said quietly. "I am filing an affidavit, and if they ask who opened it, I am telling them the truth. Marjorie's face went white. You wouldn't send the police to my door. Watch me, I said. I turned and walked out. If you do this, Marjorie screamed after me, you are dead to this family. Do you hear me? Lucy? Dead. The next morning, I sat in a small, cramped office at the legal aid clinic. My housing counselor, Sarah, had pulled some strings to get me an emergency appointment. The attorney, a man named Mr. Patel, sat across from me. He was calm, methodical, and spoke in a low voice that helped settle my racing heart. He reviewed the credit report and the notes I had made about the security questions. This is a classic case of familial identity theft. Mr. Patel said, it is unfortunately very common. Parents use their children's credit when their own is exhausted. They rationalize it as household management. Can I get it off my report? I asked. I cannot rent an apartment with this on there. I am trapped. Mr. Patel nodded. Yes, but there is a process. He laid out 2 paths. Option A, he said, you file a police report for identity theft. You name your mother as the suspect. We use that police report to force the credit bureaus to block the debt immediately. It is the fastest way, but it triggers a criminal investigation against your mother. I looked at my hands, arresting her, sending the police to the house where my daughter slept. The fallout would be nuclear. And option B? I asked. Option B is a civil dispute, he said. We file an affidavit with the Federal Trade Commission claiming identity theft without necessarily naming a suspect immediately. Though the investigation will likely lead to her address, we send demand letters to the utility company and the collection agency. It takes longer. Months. Maybe. But it keeps it out of the criminal courts for now. Unless the utility company decides to press charges themselves. I rubbed my temples. I needed to move now. I didn't have months. But if I file the police report, she could go to jail? It is possible. Mr. Patel said, depending on the amount and her history, identity theft is a felony. I thought about the tax lien, the credit card debt. If she went to jail, the house would definitely be lost. Ava would lose her childhood home in the most traumatic way possible. I cannot arrest her, I whispered. Not yet. I just want to leave. Mr. Patel nodded. Then we will start with the FTC affidavit and a strong letter from my office to the collection agency. We will demand they validate the debt. Sometimes, just seeing a lawyer's letterhead makes them pause reporting while they investigate. It might bump your score up enough to get approved. He slid a form across the desk. Fill this out. We will fight this. Ms. Ward, but you need to understand something. What? She will not stop. He said, people who do this, they do not stop until they hit a wall. You have to be the wall. I picked Ava up from the library that afternoon. She hopped into the car, looking exhausted. Her eyes were dark-circled. Hey, Mom, she said. Hey, sweetie. How was work? It was okay. She hesitated, then turned to me. Mom, I talked to the manager at the pizza place next to the library. Why? They are hiring evening shift drivers. She said, I could do it. I could work 5 to 10 every night. That is like $300 a week. I could give it to you for the deposit. I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles turned white. No, Ava. But Mom, we need money. I heard you on the phone. I know about the credit thing. Marjorie told me you mismanaged a bill, but I know she is lying. I pulled the car over to the curb and put it in park. I turned to face her. Listen to me. You are not working a pizza job. You are going to college. But I want to help, Ava cried. I feel useless. You are not useless, I said fiercely. You are the goal. Everything I am doing, every fight I am fighting, is so you can walk onto that campus in September and not worry about electric bills or rent or ledgers. If you sacrifice your grades to pay for my apartment, then she wins. Do you understand? She wants us stuck in the cycle. She wants you tired and desperate so you will sign her papers. Ava looked down, tears slipping off her chin. I just want it to stop, she whispered. It will stop. I promised. I am handling it. I have a lawyer. We are going to get out, but you have to do your job, which is being a student. Can you do that for me? She nodded. Okay, Mom. I pulled back onto the road. My heart was breaking for her. She was 18, and she was already learning the weight of survival. I had to get us out before the weight crushed her. That night, Eric called me. Meet me at the 7-Eleven, he said. The one on Route 9. 10 minutes. He sounded breathless. I drove there, parking under the flickering fluorescent light of the gas station canopy. Eric was waiting by the air pump, looking over his shoulder. He walked up to my window and passed me a piece of paper. It was a printout of a photo. I took it today, he said. It was on her desk. She was shredding things. I grabbed it when she went to the bathroom. I turned on the dome light. It was a letter. The letterhead was black and bold. Apex Lending Solutions. Dear Ms. Beige, Ward, this is a final notice regarding your short-term liquidity loan. The principal balance of $15,000, plus accrued interest of $4,000, is due in full by June 30th. Failure to remit payment will result in immediate legal action and the attachment of assets. June 30th. That was tomorrow. The rent tomorrow demand. The urgency. The explosion over the scholarship money. It wasn't about teaching Ava responsibility. It wasn't even about the tax lien. Not directly. It was this. She had taken out a predatory, high-interest loan, a payday loan on steroids, probably to pay the minimums on her credit cards or keep the tax man at bay for another month, and now the balloon payment was due. She needed $19,000 by tomorrow. She had calculated Ava's rent, the scholarship money, and whatever she could squeeze from me, hoping to scrape together enough to keep the sharks away. She is going to lose the house, Eric said, leaning in the window. This Apex place? I looked them up. They are vicious. They sue immediately. She did this to herself, I said, staring at the numbers. She is trying to pin it on us, Eric said. She told Aunt Patrice today that you and Ava are draining the estate, and that is why she can't pay her bills. She is setting up the narrative. Lucy, when the house gets taken, she is going to say it was because she gave everything to her ungrateful daughter. I crumpled the paper. She wants to be the victim. I said, even if it means burning us alive. What are you going to do? Eric asked. I am moving. I said, tomorrow. But you didn't get the apartment. I will find another one. I will sleep in the car. I do not care. I am not staying in that house one more night. I went back to the guest house. Ava was asleep. I started pulling things off the walls, the framed photos, the cheap art I had bought at thrift stores. I packed them into garbage bags. I looked at the furniture, the sofa we had bought at a garage sale, the bookshelf. I couldn't take them. I didn't have a truck, and Eric's offer was too risky now that Marjorie was on the warpath. I took pictures of everything. I posted them on Marketplace. Sofa, $50. Pick up tonight. Bookshelf, $20. Microwave, $30. I needed cash. Every dollar counted. By midnight, 3 strangers had come to the guest house door. I sold the sofa to a college student. I sold the bookshelf to a young couple. The living room was empty, just outlines in the dust where our lives had been. I had $300 in my pocket. It wasn't enough for a deposit, but it was enough for a week at the motored inn on the highway. I sat on the floor, exhausted. My phone pinged. It was an email from a landlord I had messaged earlier. A woman renting a basement in-law suite near the university bus line. Ms. Ward, I spoke to your employer at the clinic. They gave you a glowing reference. I am willing to overlook the credit score issue if you can provide 2 months' rent up front. Can you view it tomorrow? 2 months' rent. $2,400. I had the $2,000 saved. I had the $300 from the furniture. I was short $100. I could do this. I texted back. I will be there at 8 a.m. The next morning, the atmosphere in the main house was toxic. You could taste the tension in the water. Marjorie had called a family meeting. She had summoned Eric. She had FaceTimed Aunt Patrice, who refused to pick up, so Marjorie left a voicemail. She had even called Cousin Sarah. At 10 o'clock, she sat at the head of the dining table. I stood by the door, refusing to sit. Ava stood next to me. Marjorie looked immaculate. She was wearing her best pearls. but her hands were shaking. "I have called you all here because we are in a crisis," Marjorie began. Her voice was trembling with manufactured emotion. "Our family is under attack," she said, "not from the outside, but from within." She pointed a finger at me. "Lucy has decided to abandon this family. She has decided to spread lies about me. She has accused me of crimes. She has turned my own sister against me." She looked at Eric. "And she is dragging you down with her. Eric, I know you have been talking to her." Eric looked at the floor. "I am simply trying to protect our home," Marjorie said. "I have asked for a modest contribution from Ava, a contribution that any responsible adult would make, and I have been met with hostility and threats." She took a deep breath. "So, I am making a decision, for the good of the family." She looked at me, her eyes hard. "Lucy, unless you apologize to me, right now, in front of everyone, unless you admit that you are unstable and that you have fabricated these accusations about the utility bill, and unless Ava signs the residency agreement—" She paused. "You are no longer welcome in this family. I will change the locks. I will remove you from my will. I will cut you off completely." The room was silent. I looked at Eric. He was pale. I looked at Ava. She was scared, but she was standing tall. I looked at Marjorie. I saw the fear behind the mask. She knew the Apex loan was due today. She knew the house of cards was falling. She needed me to break. She needed me to sign something, pay something, be the bad guy so she could be the martyr. I stepped forward. "I am not unstable. Mom," I said clearly, "and I'm not apologizing for the truth." I pulled the credit report from my bag and laid it on the table. "This is the utility bill you opened in my name." I pulled the photo of the Apex lending letter from my pocket and laid it next to the report. "And this is the loan you are trying to pay off with Ava's scholarship money." Marjorie gasped. She snatched the photo. "Where did you get this?" I looked at Eric. He looked up. Finally meeting her eyes, I gave it to her. "Mom." Marjorie looked like she had been shot. "Et tu, brute? You are not protecting the family." "Mom," I said, "you are protecting your secrets, and we are done paying for them." I turned to Ava. "Go get your bags." Marjorie stood up, knocking her chair over. "If you leave, you take nothing," she screamed. "The furniture is mine. The dishes are mine. We sold the furniture," I said calmly, "and we do not want your dishes." I took Ava's hand. "Goodbye, Mom." We walked out. Marjorie followed us to the porch, screaming, "You will fail. You cannot make it without me. You will be back crawling on your knees." I put our suitcases in the trunk of my car. I got into the driver's seat. Ava got in beside me. I started the engine. As we backed out of the driveway, I saw Marjorie standing on the porch, alone, a small figure in a big empty house that didn't really belong to her anymore. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel afraid. I felt the immense, terrifying weight of freedom. "Where are we going?" Ava asked. "Home," I said, "a real one." The dining room air was stifling, thick with the scent of furniture polish and stale tension. Marjorie sat at the head of the table, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. It was a masterclass in martyrdom. She did not just cry, she wept with the quiet, shaking dignity of a deposed queen. I sat halfway down the table, my hands folded on top of my folder labeled "The Truth." Eric was opposite me, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the floorboards. Cousin Sarah sat near Marjorie, looking uncomfortable. Her eyes darting between us. "I have given everything," Marjorie said, her voice trembling. "I gave up my privacy. I gave up my quiet years. I opened my home when you had nowhere else to go. Lucy, and this is how I am repaid? With accusations? With slander?" She looked at Sarah. "Seeking an ally, she tells people I am extorting her," Marjorie continued, sniffing. "She tells strangers I am a thief, because I asked for a little help with the bills? Because I asked her daughter to learn the value of $1? Sarah cleared her throat. "Lucy, maybe you should just hear her out? Family helps family." I opened my folder. I did not raise my voice. I kept it low, steady. the voice of a woman who was done navigating a minefield. I am not talking about help. Sarah, I said, I am talking about a ledger that lists $40,000 of debt for things that were gifts. I pulled out a printed screenshot of a text message from 3 years ago. I slid it across the mahogany table toward Sarah. Read the date, I said. July 12th. Sarah picked it up. It says, Mom, here is $200 for the electric. And Marjorie replied, No, honey, keep it. Buy Ava those shoes she wants. I have plenty. I pulled out a page from the ledger copy I had made. Now look at this entry for July 12th of the same year. I said, electricity overage. Lucy refused to pay. Added to debt, $200, plus interest. Sarah looked from the text to the ledger. Her brow furrowed. Marjorie waved a hand dismissively. That was context. Lucy! I was being polite. I was trying to preserve your dignity because I knew you were broke, but I still incurred the cost. You cannot hold my kindness against me. I pulled out another sheet. And this? I asked. The ledger starts 10 years ago. June. Ava was 2 years old. You charged me a toddler nuisance fee of $50 because she cried in the night. The room went dead silent. Sarah looked at Marjorie. You charged for a crying baby? Marjorie stiffened. It was a disruption. I have insomnia. Do you know what it is like to have a screaming child in your house when you are used to silence? It has a value. Sarah, peace has a value. I stood up. This isn't about value. Mom, it is about control. You wrote down every moment of our lives and put a price tag on it so that one day, when you needed leverage, you could hand me a bill I could never pay. Marjorie slammed her hand on the table. I am the victim here. I am the one losing my home. I pulled out my phone and dialed Aunt Patrice. I put it on speaker and set it in the center of the table. Patrice? You are on with the family. Patrice's voice filled the room, crackling slightly but clear enough. Hello, Marjorie, Patrice said. Marjorie's eyes widened. She lunged for the phone. Turn that off. I blocked her hand. Tell them. Patrice, I said. She did the same thing to me 12 years ago. Patrice said. Her voice was tired, heavy with old grief. When I left David, she offered me a room. She said it was free. Then she handed me a bill for $6,000 and threatened to tell everyone I stole from her if I didn't pay. Marjorie was shaking her head violently. She is lying. She is unstable. She is not lying, a quiet voice said. We all turned. It was Eric. He was looking at his phone. Cousin Mike just texted me back. Eric said, Marjorie asked him for $5,000 last week. She told him it was for Ava's tuition. Ava gasped. She turned to Marjorie. You used my name? Marjorie stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. I did it for us, for the house. She turned to Ava, her eyes wild, pleading. Ava, listen to me. Your mother is bitter. She is jealous of our bond. You know I love you. You know I have always been there. She reached out a hand. You are the future of this family. Ava, you have the scholarship. You have the potential. If you stay close, if you help us stabilize, you will inherit everything. This house, the legacy. Do not throw it away because your mother is having a tantrum. Ava looked at her grandmother. She looked at the outstretched hand, manicured and trembling. I am not staying. Grandma, Ava said clearly. Marjorie froze. I am moving to campus. Ava continued. I submitted my housing deposit this morning, and I am not giving you access to my student account. My scholarship is for my education, not for your debts. Marjorie's face transformed. The sorrow vanished, replaced by a cold, sneering rage. You ungrateful little brat, she hissed. The insult hung in the air like smoke. I raised you, Marjorie spat. I bought your clothes. I fed you, and you think you are better than me? You are just like your mother, selfish, weak. That is enough, I said. I grabbed my folder. I signaled to Ava. We are done, Mom. I did not wait for a rebuttal. I did not wait for the tears to return. I took my daughter's arm and we walked out of the dining room, leaving Marjorie standing amidst the ruins of her performance. staring at a family that had finally stopped clapping. The next morning, I was sitting on a packing crate in the empty living room of the guest house, drinking instant coffee. The high of the confrontation had faded, replaced by the grim reality of logistics. My phone rang. It was the landlord of the basement suite in Maple Hollow, the one who had asked for 2 months' rent up front. Ms. Ward? Yes, I said, breathless. I have the money ready. I am sorry. He said, I ran the formal check this morning. I cannot approve the application. My stomach dropped. But you said if I paid up front. It is the collection account. He said, it is not just the score, it is the status. It is listed as disputed. Potential fraud. That makes you a liability. Ms. Ward, if you are involved in legal trouble regarding identity theft, I cannot get involved. It is too messy. But I am the victim. I pleaded. I understand that. He said. But from a risk management perspective, it is a red flag. I rented it to someone else an hour ago. Good luck. The line went dead. I lowered the phone, fighting the urge to scream. Marjorie's poison was still working. Even as I tried to cut her out, the tendrils of her financial abuse were wrapping around my ankles, dragging me back. I called Mr. Patel, the attorney. It is blocking me, I said, my voice tight. I cannot rent a place. The dispute status is scaring landlords off. We need to expedite the verification. Mr. Patel said, I sent the demand letter to Titan Recovery yesterday. Did you get any access to the original account details? Not yet. Try to recover the account, he said. Go to the Briar Glen Energy website. Use the Forgot Password feature. If the email address on file is yours, you can reset it. If it is not yours, well, that is evidence. I opened my laptop. I went to the utility company's site. I entered my social security number and last name in the account recovery tool. Account found. We will send a password reset link to the email on file. M. Ward, family. I stared at the screen. M. Ward, family, I knew that address. It was an email Marjorie had created years ago, claiming it was for organizing family reunions and holiday newsletters. She had asked for my email password once to sync the calendars. I didn't have access to the email account itself, but the mask revealed enough. The account associated with my debt was linked to her email. I took a screenshot. It was the smoking gun. It proved she controlled the account. I sent it to Mr. Patel. Got it, he replied. I am attaching this to the affidavit. This connects her directly to the fraud. I will threaten Titan with a suit if they do not delete the trade line within 48 hours. 48 hours. It was fast in legal terms, but an eternity when you were effectively homeless. I was packing the last of the kitchen utensils when Eric walked in. He didn't knock. He looked different today. Shoulders back, chin up. I heard about the apartment. He said, news travels fast. I muttered. Marjorie was celebrating. He said, she told Sarah you got rejected. She thinks you will come crawling back by the weekend. I taped a box shut with a vicious rip of the packing tape. I will sleep in a tent before I come back. You do not have to, Eric said. I looked up. What? I found a place, he said. It is small, a 2-bedroom duplex on the south side. It is a dump, honestly, but the landlord is a buddy of mine from the garage. He does not run credit checks if he knows you. I stood up. Eric, I cannot ask you to. I am not asking, he said. I am renting it. Both of us. I am moving out too. I stared at him. You are leaving the main house? I cannot stay there. Lucy, not after last night. Seeing her turn on Ava. Hearing what she did to Patrice, I cannot unknow that. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. I have been the peacekeeper for 35 years. He said, I am tired. Luce, I am really tired. So, I talked to my buddy. He said if I sign the lease, you can be a co-tenant. He knows you work hard. He does not care about the collection thing. I felt a lump form in my throat. Eric, the man who hid in the garage to avoid conflict, was blowing up his life to save mine. Are you sure? I asked. She will never forgive you. I know. he said. But maybe that is the price of admission to the real world. We move Saturday? I asked. Saturday, he said. The next day at the clinic, I was lighter. I had a plan. I had a home. Then, my office manager, Brenda, called me into her office. Brenda was a stern woman who valued punctuality above all else, but she had always been fair to me. She closed the door and gestured for me to sit. She looked uncomfortable. Lucy, we received a concerning phone call this morning, she said. My heart skipped a beat. A call? It was anonymous, Brenda said, though she raised an eyebrow that suggested she knew exactly who it was. The caller claimed to be a concerned creditor. They suggested that you are in severe financial distress and that you might be a risk for handling patient copays and cash transactions. I felt the blood drain from my face. Marjorie. She was going for the jugular. She couldn't stop me from moving, so she was trying to get me fired. Brenda, I said, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. That was my mother. She is angry that I'm moving out. Brenda sighed and took off her glasses. I assumed as much. Lucy. The caller had a very distinct way of speaking. She used the word unstable 3 times. I am not unstable, I said, and I have never touched a penny of the clinic's money. You can audit my drawer right now. I know, Brenda said. I checked your logs before I called you in. You are balanced to the cent, as always. She leaned forward. I am not firing you. Lucy, you are one of my best employees, but you need to know she is escalating if she starts calling the dentist directly or harassing the other staff. She will not, I said quickly. I will handle it. Just be careful, Brenda said softly. Families can be complicated, but do not bring the drama here. Lucy, I run a business. I walked out of the office trembling with rage. It was a new level of violation. She was willing to starve me to prove I needed her. She would burn down my livelihood just to be the one to hand me a blanket in the ashes. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. You want war? Mom? I thought, looking at my reflection. Okay. I texted Mr. Patel. She called my boss. She is trying to get me fired. Send the demand letter to her directly. Now, tell her if she contacts my employer again. We are filing for a restraining order. Mr. Patel replied instantly, drafting it now. Saturday morning was gray and drizzly, a perfect backdrop for an exodus. Eric pulled his buddy's pickup truck up to the guest house. We worked in silence, moving swiftly, boxes, bags, the few pieces of furniture I hadn't sold. Marjorie stood at the window of the main house, watching. She didn't come out. She didn't yell. She just watched, a silhouette behind the lace curtains she loved so much, when the last box was loaded. I did a final sweep of the guest house. It was empty. The walls were bare, the holes where my pictures had hung staring back like unblinking eyes. It looked small, shabby. It looked like what it was, a garage, not a home. I locked the door and dropped the key on the kitchen counter. I walked out to the truck. Ava was already in the middle seat. Eric was behind the wheel. Ready? Eric asked. Ready, I said. We drove away. We didn't look back. The duplex was exactly as Eric had described. A dump. The carpets were shag. The cabinets were yellow, and the faucet leaked. But it was ours. We spent the afternoon unpacking. Ava set up her desk in the smaller bedroom. Eric took the larger one. I took the living room sofa for now. Until we could afford a partition or a bigger place, at sunset, we ordered pizza. We sat on the floor of the living room, eating from the box, laughing about the ugly wallpaper, for the first time in 10 years. I wasn't calculating the cost of the laughter. I wasn't wondering if Marjorie would charge me a cleaning fee for the pizza box. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. A voicemail from Marjorie. The room went quiet. Ava stopped chewing. Eric looked at me. Put it on speaker, Eric said. I pressed play. Marjorie's voice filled the empty room. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't crying. She sounded eerily calm, almost pleasant. Hello? Lucy? I saw you leave. I saw Eric driving the truck. I suppose you think you have won. You think you have escaped. A pause. The sound of ice clinking in a glass. But you forget something. I kept the records. All of them. Not just the money. I kept the journals. The letters from your father. The things you told me in confidence when you were struggling. If you walk away, don't expect the truth to stay buried. Families don't survive secrets being aired. Lucy, and I have nothing left to lose. The message ended. I stared at the phone. She was threatening to release what? My private thoughts? My vulnerability? She is bluffing, Eric said, though he looked uneasy. She is not bluffing. I said, she is cornered. I looked at Ava. She looked terrified. What does she have? Mom? Nothing that can hurt us anymore, I said, forcing a confidence I didn't feel. She can tell the world whatever she wants. We are free. But as I lay on the sofa that night, listening to the drip, drip, drip of the kitchen faucet, Marjorie's words echoed in my mind. I have nothing left to lose. A woman with nothing to lose was the most dangerous creature on earth, and I had a feeling the final battle wasn't over yet. The Saturday morning we left was not a quiet exit. It was a piece of theater produced, directed, and starring my mother, intended for an audience of everyone on Oak Lane. Although Eric and I had moved the boxes in a blur of efficiency, Marjorie stood in the open doorway of the main house, wearing a dressing gown that looked more like a funeral shroud. She did not help. She did not scream. Instead, she leaned against the doorframe, letting out long, trembling sighs that carried across the lawn like fog. When Mrs. Gable came out to water her hydrangeas, Marjorie's performance escalated. She slumped visibly, putting a hand to her forehead as if the very sight of her daughter's independence was causing her to faint. I ignored her. I was in the zone. I was carrying the last of the trash bags, the ones filled with the clothes I had worn for 10 years of servitude. Ava was quiet, keeping her head down as she carried her laptop bag to Eric's truck. Mom is watching, Ava whispered as we passed each other on the path. Let her watch, I said, not breaking my stride. She is not watching us. She is watching her control drive away. I walked back to the guest house for the final inspection. The room was hollow. The dust bunnies in the corners were the only things left of the life we had built there. I checked the closets. Empty. I checked the drawers. Empty. Marjorie appeared in the doorway behind me. She didn't cross the threshold. You missed a spot, she said, pointing a manicured finger at a smudge on the window. I turned to face her. The urge to scream was there, burning in my throat, but I swallowed it. Goodbye, Mom, I said. She let out a short, sharp laugh. Goodbye? You think this is goodbye? You are making a mistake. Lucy, a massive, catastrophic mistake. You will be back. The world is expensive, and you are not equipped for it. I walked past her. I didn't brush against her. I treated her like a piece of furniture, an obstacle to be navigated. I am equipped. I said, I just paid a utility bill that wasn't mine. That is a pretty expensive lesson in survival. Marjorie stiffened. Her eyes darted to the neighbor's lawn. Keep your voice down, she hissed. I kept walking. I got into the truck. Eric started the engine. And as we pulled away, I looked in the side mirror. Marjorie was still standing there, a small, bitter statue in a driveway that was slowly cracking under the weight of her own secrets. 3 days later, the envelope from the credit bureau arrived at the duplex. The new apartment was ugly. The shag carpet smelled faintly of wet dog, and the kitchen cabinets were a peeling shade of mustard yellow, but it was quiet. No one was sighing in the doorway. No one was calculating the cost of my showers. I sat at the wobbly kitchen table and opened the mail. It was the response to my dispute regarding the Briar Glen Energy account. Attached to the letter were the verification documents provided by the collection agency. They had done their due diligence. They had pulled the original application logs. I scanned the pages. Date of application, October 12th. 5 years ago. Time, 8:45 in the evening. IP address, 192.168. ISP, Comcast Cable. Service address, 442. Oak Lane. It was the house, The timestamp matched a period when I was working the night shift at the diner. I wasn't even home at 8:45. Marjorie was... She would have been sitting in her armchair, watching her shows, typing my social security number into her laptop. The report didn't say Marjorie Ward. It didn't have a fingerprint or a video of her doing it, but the pattern was undeniable. The IP address was the same one used for the main house account. I held the paper, feeling the weight of the decision. It was enough for a civil suit. It was probably enough for a police report, if I could get a detective to care about a $3,000 identity theft case. But did I want to be the daughter who sent the police to her mother's door? The thought made my stomach turn, not because I wanted to protect her, but because I knew what it would do to Ava. Ava, who was just starting to breathe. If Grandma got arrested, the trauma would bleed into Ava's new life. It would become the defining story of her college years. I didn't want justice that cost my daughter her peace. I wanted severance. I grabbed my purse and drove to the legal aid clinic. Mr. Patel looked at the documents. He nodded slowly. "This is strong," he said. "It places the origin of the fraud inside her residence while you were verified to be at work. We can win this. Lucy, I do not want to sue her." I said, "Not for the money. I just want it off my report. And I want her to stop." Mr. Patel leaned back in his chair. "Then we take the strategic route," he said. "We send a demand letter, a formal, legal warning. We attach these logs. We tell her that we have the evidence to pursue criminal charges for identity theft and fraud. But we are willing to forgo that action if she agrees to two things." "What things?" "1, Mr. Patel counted on his finger. "She ceases all interference with your employment and housing. 2, she preserves all financial records, the ledger, the bank statements, everything. We put her on notice that if she destroys evidence, she is committing a crime. And the debt?" I asked. "We send a copy of this to the collection agency with an affidavit of identity theft." Mr. Patel said, "We tell them the suspect has been identified as a family member and legal action is pending. They will likely delete the trade line to avoid liability. They do not want to be in the middle of a domestic fraud case." "Do it," I said. "Send the letter." The reaction was immediate. Marjorie did not call me. She called everyone else. My phone started buzzing while I was at work. It was Cousin Sarah again, then Uncle Bob, then a number I didn't recognize, which turned out to be my second cousin in Ohio. I let them all go to voicemail. At lunch, I listened to the messages. "Lucy, this is Bob. Marjorie is hysterical. She says you sent her a threatening legal letter. She says you are trying to blackmail her. What is going on?" "Lucy, it is Sarah. She says you are accusing her of hacking. She is an old woman." "Lucy, she doesn't even know how to use PDF. This is cruel. She was spinning it. She was pre-framing the narrative. She knew the evidence was damning, so she was inoculating the family against the truth by painting me as a litigious, ungrateful aggressor." I sat in my car, eating a cold sandwich. I could call them back. I could scream the details of the IP logs. I could send them the screenshots of the text messages. But that was the trap. That was the mud. Marjorie lived in the mud. If I jumped in to wrestle her, I would just get dirty, and she would enjoy the contact. I composed a single text message. I added everyone, Bob, Sarah, Patrice, Eric, even the cousins in Ohio, to a group chat. "I am sending this message once to clarify the situation. I have moved out for the safety and stability of myself and my daughter, due to financial irregularities involving my identity that originated from the family home. I have had to involve legal counsel to clear my credit history. I am not seeking revenge. I am seeking to pay my own bills and live my own life. I will not be discussing this further. If you want to support me, I am happy to talk. If you want to relay messages from Marjorie, please do not call." I hit send. Then I blocked the notifications for the group. It was terrifying. I was cutting the cord, not just to her, but to the entire ecosystem she controlled. I was choosing to be an orphan rather than a hostage. August arrived with a humid, heavy heat. It was time for Ava's orientation. We drove to the campus in my beat-up sedan. The university was only 40 minutes away. But it felt like a different planet. The lawns were manicured, the brick buildings imposing and solid. We carried Ava's boxes into her dorm room. It was tiny, smaller than the guest house bedroom, but it was hers. There was no ledger on the desk. There were no eyes watching from the hallway. I helped her make the bed. We put up posters. We organized her pens. When we were done, I stood by the window, looking out at the quad where students were throwing a frisbee. "You okay, Mom?" Ava asked. I turned. She looked older, taller. The shadow that had been hanging over her for the last 3 months seemed to have lifted. "I am great." I said, "I am just proud." Ava sat on the bed. "I feel guilty," she said quietly. "Why?" "Because I am happy," she said, "and I know she is probably at home, freaking out about the loan. That is not your burden." "Ava," I said firmly, "you did not sign that loan. You did not spend that money." "I know," she said, "but she is still my grandma." I sat next to her and took her hand. "You can love her, Ava. You can wish her well, but you cannot set yourself on fire to keep her warm. That is what she wanted. She wanted us to be fuel." Ava squeezed my hand. "I am not going to be fuel," she said. I hugged her tight. I felt a mixture of profound relief and a sharp, stinging grief. This was the moment every mother wanted, launching her child. But I was also mourning the family we should have had. In a normal world, Marjorie would be here. She would be buying lunch. She would be hugging Ava. Instead, she was an enemy combatant we had to escape. I left Ava at the dorm. I drove away with tears in my eyes. But by the time I hit the highway, the tears were gone. That night, Eric came home late. He looked pale. He threw his keys on the counter and slumped onto the sofa. "It is bad," he said. "What happened?" "I went by the house to pick up my tools," he said. "The Apex lender? They served her. Served her with what?" "A lawsuit," Eric said. "They are suing for the full amount, $19,000 plus legal fees. They are moving to garnish her pension." I felt a cold shiver. It was happening. The collapse. "And the tax lien is moving forward," Eric added. "The county posted a notice on the front door." "What did she say?" "She didn't say anything," Eric said. "She was quiet. Too quiet. She asked me where you were living. You didn't tell her." "Did you?" "No, but she looked at me with this focus. She said she needs to see you. I am not seeing her." "Eric." "She said she has a proposal," Eric said. "She said she wants to settle. She said she is willing to forgive everything if you just talk to her." "Forgive what?" I snapped. "The debt is fake." "I know," Eric said, "but she is desperate. Lucy, and she is scary when she is desperate. She said if you do not meet her, she is going to come to the clinic. She said she will make a scene that you will never live down." I closed my eyes. She would do it. She would scream in the waiting room. She would force Brenda to fire me. "Fine," I said. "One time. Neutral ground." We met at a park halfway between the duplex and the main house. It was a public space, full of kids playing on swings and people walking dogs. I wanted witnesses. Marjorie was sitting on a bench near the duck pond. She wore large sunglasses and a silk scarf. She looked like a celebrity in hiding. I walked up to her but didn't sit. "What do you want?" "Mom?" She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were sunken, rimmed with red. She looked 10 years older than she had a month ago. "You look tired." "Lucy," she said, "I am working 3 jobs." I said, "Because I have legal fees. Because I'm clearing up a mess you made." Marjorie reached into her purse. She pulled out a blue folder. "I am done fighting," she said softly. "I am too old for this. The lawyers, the letters, it is too much." She held the folder out to me. I had my attorney draft this. She said, "It is a settlement, a complete release." I didn't take it. "What does it say?" "It says that I forgive the $42,000 you owe me." She said, "It says I will never pursue collection of that debt. It says the ledger is closed, permanently." "And in exchange?" I asked. "In exchange, you sign a statement," she said. "A statement that says you acknowledge the debt was real, but forgiven, and a confidentiality clause." I laughed. A short, sharp bark. A confidentiality clause? You agree not to disparage me, Marjorie said, her voice tightening. You agree not to discuss family financial matters with third parties. You agree to withdraw your affidavit with the utility company. So you want me to lie. I said, you want me to tell the government that I opened that account, so you don't get in trouble. And you want me to sign a paper saying your fake numbers were real, so you can feel vindicated. It is a clean slate, Marjorie insisted, her voice rising. It saves the family reputation. It stops the investigation. And you get off scot-free. You never have to pay me a dime. I took the folder from her hand. I opened it. I looked at the legal jargon. Mutual release, non-disparagement, admission of liability. It was a trap. If I signed this, I was admitting the debt was real. If I ever spoke out again, she could sue me for breach of contract. She wasn't forgiving me. She was buying my silence with monopoly money. I looked at her. You still don't get it, do you? I asked. Get what? I don't owe you anything. Mom, I never did. I ripped the document in half. The sound was loud in the quiet park. Marjorie gasped. You foolish girl. I ripped it again, and again. I let the pieces fall onto the grass. I am not signing your lies. I said, and I am not withdrawing the affidavit. The identity theft happened. It is a fact. Facts do not care about your reputation. Marjorie stood up. She was trembling with rage. I offered you peace, she screamed. I offered you a way out. You offered me a gag. I said. I took a step closer to her. Here is my counteroffer. Mom, listen closely. Because I am only saying it once, I lowered my voice. I will not sue you for the money you stole from me over the last 10 years. I will not sue you for the emotional damages. I will walk away. But here is the boundary. You never ask me for money again. You never ask Ava for money. You never contact my employer. And you never, ever threaten me with your ledger again. And if I don't agree? Marjorie sneered. Then I let the investigation run its course, I said. And when the apex lender takes the house, and the county takes the land, and you are standing in the street with nothing, do not call me. Call the audience you played for. See if they have a spare room. Marjorie's face went white. She stared at me, her mouth working but no sound coming out. For the first time, she saw me, not as a resource, not as a child, but as a separate, solid human being who could not be bulldozed. She leaned in close. Her voice dropped to a whisper, soft and chilling. Families don't survive secrets being aired. Lucy, if you do this, if you let them destroy me, I will make sure everyone knows. I will tell them everything. Tell them. I said, tell them all. The truth is lighter than your lies. Mom, I can carry it. I turned around. I walked away. I heard her calling my name. Lucy, come back here. You are making a mistake. I kept walking. I walked past the duck pond. I walked past the playground. I walked to my car. My hands were shaking, but my chest was open. I could breathe. I got into the car and drove back to the duplex. When I walked in, Eric was cooking dinner. The smell of burnt garlic filled the small, ugly kitchen. It was the best thing I had ever smelled. Did you do it? Eric asked, looking up from the stove. I did. I said, is it over? I don't know if it is over, I said, taking a beer from the fridge. She will probably gossip. She might even sue. She might lose the house. I took a long sip of the cold beer, but she doesn't own me anymore, and that is enough. We sat down to eat on the second-hand table I had bought for $20. It wobbled, but it held the food. We were broke. We were tired. We were the black sheep of the family. But as I looked at Eric and thought about Ava safe in her dorm room, I realized something. This was the first honest meal I had eaten in 10 years, and it tasted like freedom. Thank you so much for listening to My Daughter Graduated with Honors, Mother's Response. Start paying rent tomorrow. This story was a journey through the suffocating grip of financial abuse and the incredibly hard work it takes to break free from family patterns. I hope Lucy's fight for her daughter resonated with you. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever dealt with a family member who used money as a weapon? How did you handle it? Also, please let me know where you are listening from. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more dramas about justice, resilience, and complex family dynamics, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. Your support helps us bring these stories to life. Until next time, stay strong, and remember, your worth is not a line item in anyone's ledger.